Eli Campbell here. One thing that makes Steamboat special is how many awe-inspiring people call our valley home. You could find yourself in line at the coffee shop next to an Olympian, or sitting on the gondola next to the founder of a world-renowned business. Our community produces and attracts the best of the best in their respective fields, but most are so humble about it you would never know. These extraordinary people are the common folk in the boat. Welcome to Common Folk in the Boat. Eli Campbell here with you, joined as always by Dave Whitlinger from Billow Premium Cannabis. How are you doing?
Couldn't be better, actually.
You know, you start every one of these by saying, couldn't be better. So does that mean that every day is the best day of your life?
That's exactly what it means.
Yeah.
Why not? Look at where we are, Steamboat Springs, man.
Yeah.
Why is it that every time we start, like, we're very serious, and then as soon as you hit record, I just start giggling like a little school.
I don't know if that has anything to do with where you work, but
maybe.
Yeah. It is a beautiful time of year here in Steamboat, though. The sun is shining. Actually, we're at Dusky Grouse, and as I was coming in here this morning, right over here in the river, there was a big bull moose walking through the river. So beautiful.
Is it just me, or like moose have just sort of proliferated in the last 10, 15? Like, I moved here in late 90s. I never saw a moose. Now it's like every other day, I feel like somewhere in town there's a moose hanging out.
I've had that conversation before as well, how, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you might see one, maybe two, you'd hear about it. But now it's a regular occurrence, it seems like. And I saw a video just the other day of a mountain lion walking down Fish Creek Falls. So, the wildlife is out.
There goes my afternoon ride. Thanks.
There goes what you're high on today, which is how we start every one of our Common Folk in the Boat. What is Billow Premium Cannabis high on this week?
Well, I would say, good question. So to answer that, I would say this month, July, for those in the industry or those that aren't, but there's a quasi holiday called the 710, right? It's oil. If you write out the word, the number 710, it's oil turned upside down and backwards. So it's another way for our industry in cannabis to celebrate concentrates. Well, along that, in Denver, in the state of Colorado, I should say, there's a contest called the 710 Showdown, and I'm happy to report that Billow placed very highly. We racked up a ton of awards, probably more than we have in years past, for the Billow concentrates that are cultivated and cured here in Steamboat Springs. So here, this is a statewide competition. And the other thing that I think is worth noting is this is a blind judged competition. So meaning the judges who are tasting and judging the products don't know the brand that it came from, where it came from. All they know is what it is. Is it a live resin? Is it a cold cure? Is it a diamond? Whatever that concentrate form is. But they don't know until after they've made their winning announcement who the actual brand is. So we're very proud that we've taken placement in several categories of the 710 Showdown. So yay for Billow, of course, but I would say more just yay for Steamboat. Like, I feel proud about the fact that Billow is helping put Steamboat and cannabis on the statewide map. So that's what we're high on right now.
Well, and I have to say, I went into Billow and visited with you a couple weeks ago and just was completely impressed with just how knowledgeable you are, but how much of the product that you're selling there is your own product that you can really point to the source of and say exactly why this is beneficial to the customer, no matter what they're looking for out of it.
Yeah, and that's been sort of the case from day one. The reality is there are a ton of different brands all over the state that make incredible products. When it comes down to what we're going to carry at the dispensary, we're very, what's the word? I mean, we only want to sell the best, and I say that we've got different price points. Don't get me wrong. There's different price points for everything. But when it comes down to things like flour and our concentrates, we feel very strongly that our flour and our concentrates are worth putting on the shelf alongside anything else. So why carry other people's brands when we're very proud of what we're putting out there? So,
well, good job for Billow. Again, yay for Steamboat, as you said. And that makes for a segue into our guest today, someone who has done a lot for this community and doing so by showing off what is the best of the cycling routes around here. But more than just the director of the Tour de Steamboat, Katie Lindquist has a lot of stories to tell about her own cycling career, as well as work that she's done as an organic foods inspector and just keeping everybody kind of healthy and clean. And it's I'm really looking forward to having a little chat with her. So right after this, we'll be back with Katie Lindquist. Welcome back. We're happy to be joined by Katie Lindquist. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
It's really exciting to have you here. I've known you for a long time over numerous different roles that I've had and that you've had. But originally, you grew up in Minnesota. And my dad did too. He told me that once he realized the sun could shine in the winter somewhere else, he was going to move away. Is that kind of a similar story for you?
I feel like I was just so attracted to the mountains. I was a skier. My dad made sure we all knew how to ski. So at 2 years old, I was skiing. And once I came to Colorado, I was probably 3 or 4. I mean, I probably got hooked then. So I love the Midwest. Actually, the clouds never bothered me because it was such an active area, Minneapolis was. But the mountains, they called me.
Yeah, for sure. The mountains there are hills that are garbage dumps in the summertime practically, or golf courses. It's definitely a different thing. And then you progressed and you got into competitive cycling, and we're looking for a sponsor from what I understand. That's kind of ultimately how you ended up here in Steamboat. Can you tell that story a little bit?
It's not how I ended up here in Steamboat. I came out to a break after graduate school before a real job and skied. Taught skiing on the mountain and got the Steamboat bug. So when I was then a semi-professional cyclist, I was looking for a sponsor and got introduced to Ken Erickson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That obviously was pretty eventful for you. You got introduced to him. You moved out here in 2001, full-time though, correct?
Yeah.
And after that, decided to kind of take on some of what he had tried to do with the Tour de Steamboat and really bring it back to full life of what it was. When you did that, though, it wasn't originally an event that was for nonprofits. It was originally kind of more of a tour race style event.
Yeah, Brad Kusenberry and I started it as with Abby Slingsby as we thought we could make money. We were going to be event promoters. And at the time we had 24 hours of Steamboat and brought Tour de Steamboat on, and the Lance Armstrong effect was like full on. So Livestrong was going. Anything that you could do to raise money for a charity was gold. And so our first couple of years, we just tried to do our event. We had a couple hundred riders, traditional Gorg rule, one distance. And then we thought we'd add like the bike path as a family-friendly event. And just as we grew, we realized we needed a beneficiary, but we hadn't formed a formal nonprofit. So when we disbanded the Rocky Peak Productions, as we call it, we turned Tour de Steamboat into a nonprofit. So because we pretty much went our separate ways to make a living, and turn Tour de Steamboat into a nonprofit and have our beneficiaries have some skin in the game and help them raise money. Yeah. So that was the whole beginning. Kent started Tour de Steamboat as a race. So the hiatus between, probably the 90s and when we resurrected it in 2005 was mostly because he was running moods and putting all his efforts in there.
Right. And you, like you mentioned, you were partners with Brad Kusenberry, and then that kind of shifted things too, making it more of a personal connection to trying to raise money for the Sunshine Kids originally and people that were dealing with cancer because of his story. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Brad is probably one of the first people any of us in town knew with a brain tumor. Yeah. And I'm proud to say he's living today, probably 13, maybe 14 years, with something most people pass from in a year to 2 years. It was life-changing for him. It was life-changing for Abby and I as his partners then. And part of, I feel like, what we did to do this whole beneficiary model was an homage to him. And even though he wasn't directly involved for many reasons any longer, he fully supported what we were doing, and it just felt like the right thing to do at the time.
And how many over the years, it was the Sunshine Kids originally, but now it's grown to benefit multiple different nonprofits. How many nonprofits have you impacted, and how much money do you know has been raised over the 20 years since you've been in control?
We've given away over $1.5 million. And our beneficiaries, we chose for kind of a cross section of our community. So we had Route County Riders, partners, the mentoring organization, the Sustainability Council, and reps. And we just felt that was a cross section of different demographics and need in our community that might touch a big group of people that, you know, everybody wouldn't go, yeah, okay, that's cool, like the garden or whatever. There was really something for everyone in that, and something for all of us to be a part of it. Our original board is still intact. We've added a couple of people. We haven't lost anyone.
Yeah. And then, you know, Tour de Steamboat is now one of many cycling events in the area. When you look at Steamboat Gravel and Emerald Mountain Epic, and you have the COG and all sorts of different events that come through here. But Tour de Steamboat was really one that really set the tone for giving back to the community like you do. And what is it about this community that you think makes it so easy to bring cycling events here, but also the philanthropic aspect of it?
Well, people love Steamboat. I mean, we can't say that enough. We know that about this community. Well, if you hold it, they will come. So we definitely bring in people from outside the community, but this event attracts people in the community. I mean, we really find people, again, have an affinity for who we're raising money for. They like the non-race aspect, the celebration of just cycling, or being able to have friends out there, stop at aid stations, have volunteers help them accomplish their ride. Maybe it's a ride goal, a distance goal. Maybe it's just a nice day out on a bike where they can enjoy other people and they know their money is going back to a community effort. I mean, selfishly, when we were doing this, I was running Ken Erickson Cycles, and it helped. It was a marketing tool for us, but it became so much more than that. And we would make a bike every year and give that bike away, and that raised more money. So there were a lot of pluses to doing it. It's been a 100% volunteer effort for many years, and so I think people recognize that that's not without a lot of elbow grease. And today, I mean, we're a very well-oiled machine. There's not a lot that can go wrong in our control over this event. Yeah. So,
quick tidbit. I'll just throw this. I was new to biking as a whole in probably early 2000, and it wasn't until the first year I did Tour de Steamboat, and I'm trying to think now if that was like 2007-ish or something. It was early 2000s, and it was the first 100-miler. And so for me, it was very much a distance goal. I wanted to ride a century.
And it's like 110.
Yeah, it was kind of, thank you, by the way, for that little tweak on the advertising. No, it was one of those that you show up that day. And I remember still to this day, I was nervous. I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to finish. And I was checking ahead of time, are there going to be SAG vehicles if I, bonk out or whatever? Made it through, and I've never felt more personally rewarding, rewarded great. Because it was at that time, it was the longest ride I'd ever done.
I remember my first century too.
So that's kind of cool that you continue now, even now to I guess there's probably people that this might still be their first century. Every year you probably hear that story. Yep. So good for you for keeping that going that way.
Tour de Steamboat was my first century as well, around that same time, probably a couple years after you. But yeah, it was. And it's called the Gore Gruel. It's not an easy flat century. You have rabbit ears, Gore Pass, and then coming up out of stagecoaches, at the tail end is pretty big, and it's no longer part of your event because you've evolved as cycling has evolved, and now the 100 miles is a gravel route. Talk a little bit about how kind of cycling has evolved and how that's changed what you've seen with people participating in these events.
The 100-mile was the marquee event, and we dumb it down to 100-mile. It was 117 actually in the end when we were going through Yampa and through that back area coming out of Phippsburg. So it was a good beast. Adding gravel was a no-brainer. We started having a lot of people ride up rabbit ears and turning off on Buff Park Road. And they were like, yeah, we did our own 100-miler. And it worked out for them because they could still hit some aid stations. But after that, Highway 40 just got too dangerous. Glenwood started closing. I mean, our last year of doing the Gore Gruel and Buff Park, we had a fire up on the Silver Creek fire. We had Glenwood Canyon closed, so Highway 40 was jam-packed that day because we were the detour route. And they were chip sealing, so there was this big furrow of chip seal. So the riders either had to be in the ditch or to the right of this chip seal, or to the left of this chip seal, practically in the highway. And that coupled with the section between Muddy Pass and Kremling, we're just like, we're done, you know? Yeah. We sort of thought, wow, nobody's died. Let's stop.
Quit while you're ahead.
We're going to quit while we're ahead.
While there's no fatalities.
And, you know, but then we were able to, our plan B gravel route became our plan A. It's more remote. It's beautiful. And we're out, you know, out in Dunkley Pass area. And that's where the interest is moving, is towards gravel. People want to be a little more remote, a little more removed. Yet we still have that 66-mile and 46-mile road ride for people to go out and have a good, safe road ride.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you kind of just mentioned it, and, you know, I've been in event production, and I think if you're in it long enough, you get one of those events where everything that can possibly go wrong will go wrong. And it's just the longer that you're in it, it's going to happen. It's how you react to it and learn from it.
Yeah.
And you guys have done an absolutely magnificent job learning from how driving around here has changed, and still being able to keep this event going as you have.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of touch on that, though, because you are yourself a pretty accomplished cyclist, world champion, 24-hour solo racer, a Ram finisher, Race Across America. Which is more difficult, producing the event or participating in the event?
Oh, boy. I'll have to say, after my first year of putting on Tour de Steamboat, my exact reaction was, all of us as racers need to spend time on the other side of that table because we can be real jerks. And, you know, we just don't know. We don't know how much went into me passing you a number with 4 pins and saying, here, put this on, see you at the start. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes with that, and it's not even obvious. It's not just permits. It's not just can you get those volunteers. It's training volunteers not to fail. It's making sure the permit is the right day of the right year. You know, looking at a lot of things, because I mean, I've been permitted for a road that's closed for a farmer's market too, and how are we going to ride through the farmer's market? And, you know, being told, just figure it out. And we had to figure that out with the cooperation of the farmers market. But, you know, things happen that they're unfolding right in front of you, and you got to react.
Absolutely. It's I always said that what I liked about event production is that I like being a problem solver, and there's no shortage of problems to solve in an event. Sometimes there's more than you want there to be, but it's always, that's kind of the fun part about it. In my mind. That said, I've been on not the riding side, I've been on the support side of a Race Across America, and I've said that it was the most stressful, hardest thing I've ever done. Yeah. And the cyclists, all we did was put them on a bike and tell them pedal that way.
Yeah.
Tell me about your Race Across America experience.
Well, as the pedaler, you think everyone's having a lot more fun than you are, which I know now is not the case. I can't imagine driving across the country at maybe 12 miles an hour. I've watched it, and I've been a part of it. I will go down as saying doing Ram, and I did it both solo and on a tandem. I'm so glad I did it. I'd never recommend doing it, though. I mean, it was extremely hard on my body. It was very hard on the people that cared about me. They came along to help me and to probably make sure I was okay. I also met my husband this way. So Kent was my mechanic when I did it solo.
How was that dynamic?
Well,
what did you guys talk about at the end of the week? Or didn't you? You needed a little summer vacation?
Let's see, yeah. Well, it's funny that he went back and went to work, and I continued on with a couple of my crew members, and then went and spent some time with my mom on Cape Cod to recover. I actually have a really funny story about after finishing. I went to visit my mom, and I was out for like 3 weeks at sea level, walking. I didn't even try to run or anything. Didn't ride my bike, just ate. And I came back here, and I thought, I'm going to go do the Oak Creek Loop. So I went out, and I got to the Oak Creek gas station. It was the space station. And I was famished, and I was totally bonking. And I walked in, and the guy's like, "Hi, how you doing?" I'm like, "Good, good." I'm like really bonking. And he said, "Boy, you think you're tired and hungry. A couple weeks ago, we had people come through here riding across the country in a race." And I looked at him, and I'm like, well, this guy's not going to believe that was me.
Yeah.
And I just like grabbed a couple of bars and got out of there. But I felt like I almost had to hitchhike home. I was so tired.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing how, doing something like that, the recovery can take
it's
weeks,
months or years.
Yeah.
My hands took years to recover from that.
Yeah, and mentally too.
Mentally, yeah, yeah.
And it's the same with event production. I always felt like mentally I'd forget about all the bad things that had happened last year, and then about a month or two later, all right, let's do this again. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling.
Oh yeah, I've had it. That's why I did Ram twice.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of talked about doing Ram on a tandem. I've also wanted to ask you. Many years ago, there used to be the Live for Yellow or the Live Strong Ride for Yellow up on the
I did it
Divide
on a
Ride.
tandem.
You did that on a tandem, and I've tried to ride across the Golden Gate Bridge with my wife on a tandem, and I don't know if our marriage would have survived much more than the Golden Gate Bridge. You did that on a tandem, and mountain biking. How? I mean, I can't. Riding a tandem is not an easy feat, especially on uneven terrain like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people who've known Ken Erickson for a long time understand the level of fitness he just has innately and skill that he has innately. I mean, he's the guy who would go out and put everybody's bike together for an Norba National race. And I'm talking Andy Hampson, Steve Tilford, the top names at the time. And then he'd grab a bike too and go out and finish fourth to those three. So, I mean, he would be up all night building and doing all this. His handling skills are second to none. And I think as a tandem rider, I get all the time, I have too many control issues. I couldn't do that. My husband, blah, blah, blah. He's a better rider than I am. And I completely trust his handling. I wouldn't put anybody else in front of me handling my bike that wasn't at that level. Yeah. You've got to be. I don't want somebody just as good as me. And he's got it. He's amazing. We've done Leadville. We've done Vail 100. We've put a lot of miles in. I mean, so actually the Livestrong ride was just sort of a backyard ride. Yeah. But we've done things, and he says his little qualifier like, can't endo one of these. It's like a sofa. And he's right. Our bike is 9 feet long. We're probably not going to endo, and if we do, I'm going to run into him. But so I do feel a little safer actually than on my own bike. But some of the things we've done, I'm like, I've had my only panic attacks on the back of that bike, but I just shut up and do it.
That's not a production bike, is it? Is it just a specialty for you guys?
Yeah, no, we made a lot of made a lot of.
I guess I never knew that.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I remember riding it, and you guys passed me, and just watching and thinking, how in the world is this working for you?
We passed somebody. We went down Sunshine once, and our friend that was behind us was like, there's no way I could keep up. And this is Brian Hannon, like a local legend in bike racing. And he was like, that was sick. Like, all I did was pedal. But we also both ride similarly, and we also know how to ride a bike. So I'm not back there just sitting. I know exactly where my weight should be and where I should be. And so I think that helps. To me, it's like being in a car going somewhere. You're in the same car. You're having the same experience. And, it's a lot more fun than riding solo.
I'm impressed by it. I can't imagine, but it's something that I watched it happen and thought there's no way my wife and I could do that. But and then the other thing I wanted to touch on too is we talked a little bit about the philanthropic aspect of Tour de Steamboat, but it's really it became something where you were named the Yampa Valley Philanthropic Award of the Year, a national one as well. Was that always something where you obviously kind of wanting to give back to the community, but did you have any of those sorts of ambitions to make it that big?
No, those were a complete gift from the community and from the national philanthropy organization that recognized that. I mean, I got to say, we as a board, we as a team, were always like, wow, we can give away $100,000. I don't have $100,000 to give away. I barely have $5 to give away, So as a team doing this together, we could have so much more of an impact. I mean, my role in that might be going, hey, I've got a good idea. And the rest of our board is all in, and they all have the same attitude towards it. I think my recognition in it is just maybe going, hey, I've got a good idea.
Yeah.
And we have that beneficiary board. We in turn ask them to give some of the money we give them to other beneficiaries. And that's really been profound to watch somebody who needs money go, wow, I have the gift of giving it again. This is really cool. And you expect me to do this. And they take part in the same vetting that we take part in. So it just keeps kind of perpetuating. But my mother ran a nonprofit. I grew up watching somebody write grants and trying to get money and competing with other organizations that were bigger. So it's certainly not something I strived to be a philanthropist. I like working. I like checking boxes and solving problems and helping local organizations. That's what makes Steamboat cool.
It is the local community. I've always said it is what makes this place special. There are a lot of communities where, sure, you can go biking out of your back door, or you can go skiing, but they don't have the sense of tight-knit community that Steamboat has. That's kept us all here. That's brought us here.
Yeah.
But to that end of you like working, the other part of your work has been organic foods and kind of making sure that it's the quality of organic foods and things along that line, correct?
Yeah. I look back and I'm like, how did I run Ken Erickson Cycles with my husband? I was an organic inspector, so I was traveling around inspecting processors and farms and livestock, which is my true background. I was a nutrition and physiologist for dairy cows, and so I had this. That's what I did before I met Kent, and ran a bike company. But that kind of kept my foot in that door, and it also really helped implant my background into the West, because there's not a lot of dairy farms out here, but I was able to stay in an industry that was growing, the organic industry, and prior to being in Colorado, I was in the pharmaceutical industry doing research, and so it was a natural progression. I had a lot of clinical background and FDA work, and saw the other side of a lot of production facilities.
From the organic food point of view, too, I mean, when you were getting into that, it was a much smaller industry.
Oh, yeah.
It was not as, you weren't finding that in every grocery store.
Yeah, it was 2000 when I got into it.
When back then, what were the benefits that you saw that have come to fruition now of eating and making sure that organic foods that say they're organic are truly staying that way?
I guess I'll always stand that we're so fortunate in any community that has grocery stores and access to food, because there's a lot of communities that have a gas station for their closest food. We're lucky to have organic options, especially here, but I think, and it's grown, it's probably 25% of production right now is organic. But I think it's really helped people come full circle to what am I eating? And knowing that, I thought milk came from the grocery store too. I didn't grow up with cattle. I didn't grow up on a dairy farm, but I was fascinated by large animals. And so that's just the industry I went into. And the organic scene, I think, has opened eyes to a lot of people now. We have local farms. We have grow local movements. people understand organic and what that label means. But I also totally appreciate $10 for 10 pounds of meat is as good as it gets for some people, and that's a hurdle our country has to overcome.
Yeah, for sure. And to bring this all full circle with the sports side of things and the organic foods, you're also a coach who's on Nordic ski coach, cycling coach. Is that something that you're trying to explain to your athletes as well as the body needs fuel, and clean fuel is what makes you perform at your highest?
Yeah, for sure. I have so many things about eating because it's a big deal when you're talking about young adults. They don't always understand how important food is, variety of food. Food is nutrition, nutrition as energy. Sometimes it's just, we just react to, I'm hungry, so you eat. And I'm as guilty as anyone to just grab something. But
I've got 2 teenage kids, and sometimes I'm just like blown away by some of the wrappers and containers I see in there. And this is after, and I'm sure you deal with this too, like explaining to them just that, hey, what you fuel your body with is important. So think about that. And yet, like any kid, and I was the same way. I'm not holier than thou. I eat junk food. I probably still do on occasion, but it's interesting. It's a tough, I'm sure, a conversation with especially a younger audience to really get across, like, this is important stuff.
Yeah. And, of course, people are growing and their bodies change. And one thing we have control over is what we eat. And so that suddenly becomes a control factor for young adults, mature adults. Foods can be a tough one.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, and this is, I have no idea, but there's a mural on the side of Ski and Bike Care, and every time I look at it, I think it is you. Is there any truth to that?
That's not me. I always thought it was Kathy Wiedemer, and she's sort of a doppelganger in town.
I guess so, yeah.
I don't know who it is. Chula Beauregard do that?
I think she did.
I think she did too.
Yeah.
We'll have to get her on the show.
Every time I drive by it, I look up and I say, that's got to be Katie.
That's cool. Maybe I'll have to look at it closer. Yeah. You're right. It does. Yeah. There's that Steamboat girl.
And Kathy does fit that profile as well. Well, I want to thank you for stopping by. I think that you've done some just absolutely amazing things for our community. The impact that the Tour de Steamboat has had for 20 years now, hopefully will continue for many more years. And you've laid the groundwork for just such an incredible event to show off not just the cycling here, but how to make an event of that caliber give back to the community. So
thank you very much for having me, Eli.
Thanks.